Thank you for tuning in for this brief overview of the IOC-R, a community-based vision of the coordinated ocean carbon research and observations for the next decade. I'd like to start off by acknowledging that we've had over 40 different experts from the field contribute to this vision document that we are generating, and we hope to have released in the next month or two, and acknowledge that, so there's too many contributors to individually acknowledge each of them at this point, but we also want to recognize that this is an ongoing process, and we look forward to all of your contributions and ideas for how to improve this concept moving forward. The IOC-R, Integrated Ocean Carbon Research Program, is a formal United Nations IOC working group. We've got the 6 different sponsors: the IOC, IMBER, the IOCCP, SOLAS, CLIBER, and the Global Carbon Project. Now you'll notice that 3 of these sponsors, IMBER, SOLAS, and CLIBER, are global research programs that have a scope well beyond carbon, but ocean carbon is just a piece of each of these, of IMBER, SOLAS, and CLIBER. And you know, this is really part of why we felt it was important to develop this integrated ocean carbon effort to take the unique perspectives that each of these different global research programs provide and come up with an integrated view of how ocean carbon research in particular should proceed. So we've got contributions from IMBER, SOLAS, and CLIBER. The Global Carbon Project is another global research program. Now that one is focused just on carbon, but of course it's focused not just on ocean, but also on the terrestrial and the atmospheric components, as well as the human dimensions side of the global carbon cycle. And then there's the IOCCP, the International Ocean Carbon Coordination Project. Now that one really is primarily focused on ocean carbon observations, but it's not really a research program. There's not a research strategy that they've developed moving forward. So again, we've taken the pieces of these that have really contributed to our current understanding of the ocean carbon cycle and want to integrate all of this together to develop a vision of where we want to go moving forward. So the way this all started was through an IOC-sponsored workshop that that was a little over a year ago in October of 2019. We had 34 participants that were selected from our sponsoring organizations. They came from 16 different countries. And the idea was to look at the progress that we've made over the last 2 decades and think about what is the direction we want to go over the coming decade. And so there was a very lively discussion that led to the initial formation of this strategy. And since that meeting, we have then continued to foster discussions and fold in additional parts of the community to try and develop this strategy document. And in particular, this document is intended just to be a large-scale overview of the major questions that we need to address, and intended as kind of a first step in approaching the larger community on how we might implement these steps. So we've really focused in this effort on 4 key questions that we need to address over the coming decade to really move our understanding of ocean carbon cycle and its role in climate change forward. So the first key question is, will the ocean uptake of anthropogenic CO2 continue primarily as an abiotic process? The global carbon cycle models and the measurement-based approaches for estimating anthropogenic CO2 in the oceans assume or have the fundamental process that is contributing to this ocean increase of carbon, driven by the air-sea exchange of CO2. That as we burn fossil fuels and increase CO2 in the atmosphere, that's promoting a thermodynamic drive to push carbon dioxide into the ocean that doesn't really involve necessarily biology. We do recognize that biology is an integral part of the carbon cycle, as illustrated from this, this cartoon that's shown here from the last IPCC assessment report. You know, in the oceans, we've got the marine biota, we've got dissolved organic carbon, but you know, if we really focus in on the accumulation of anthropogenic CO2 in the oceans, this 2.3 petagrams of carbon added each year in this cartoon, that uptake really is somewhat of an abiotic process. It's a physical chemical process that's driving that uptake. But if that's the way that we presume that the ocean has operated in the past, that doesn't necessarily reflect how the ocean is going to operate in the future. You know, just intuitively and from, you know, our understanding of ocean acidification and ocean warming and changes in stratification, we recognize that there must be changes in the marine ecosystems and in the processes that are affecting marine biology that will have an implication for the carbon cycle. And we need to be prepared to observe and document and understand those processes if we want to understand anthropogenic uptake and storage in the future. Now that ties very closely into the second key question: what is the changing role of biology in the ocean carbon cycle? Now that first question is really focused just on the implications for anthropogenic uptake and storage. This question really is taking that broader view of, you know, what is the connection between biology and all of ocean carbon inorganic cycling in the oceans. And to illustrate that, I show this figure from this recently published figure from Wagner et al. With all these different arrows illustrating the different fluxes of organic carbon in the ocean and the different inventories. And all of this ties into the inorganic carbon cycle. And on the right here, we see the uncertainty in these different fluxes that can be orders of magnitude that we still need to better characterize if we want to understand organic cycling in the ocean. And in particular, as we go back to that first question of understanding what are the anthropogenic fluxes and storage, that we really cannot do that without understanding all of these other arrows, all of these other processes that are affecting ocean carbon and might be changing over the next decade that we really must better understand. The third question, what are the exchanges of carbon between the land-ocean ice continuum, is another one that we've tried to address for quite a while. Those of you that are a certain age may recognize this figure on the left, where back in the 1990s, we were already then recognizing the importance of trying to understand carbon fluxes from dry land through the coastal ocean out into the open ocean. And I would argue that we still do not fully understand the processes and the fluxes that are happening there. The coastal ocean is just such a dynamic region and so many different processes involved that there's still a lot of work to be done to try and view this. And of course, there are communities that are looking at these processes specifically. But what this particular focus is on trying to get that global view of what are the global fluxes and processes that really need to be addressed. Now, like I said, we've been dealing with this for a while, but I think one of the newer aspects of this question that we haven't fully appreciated yet is what is the role of sea ice in understanding these different processes, and what's the connection between sea ice, which represents roughly 12% of the global area of the oceans, and the open oceans that are not covered with ice. And what are the processes, what are the fluxes, what are the mechanisms that relate these ice dynamics to ocean biology and to ocean carbon that need to be fully understood. So that's why we characterize this as the land-ocean ice continuum within this question. And then the fourth question, the one that really is driving all of this from the United Nations perspective, is how are humans altering the ocean carbon cycle, and what are the resulting feedbacks from that? And of course, we all recognize this little diagram here that talks about the Sustainable Development Goals, and in particular, SDG 14 that addresses life in the ocean, and how is it that the ocean carbon cycle and an improved understanding of biology and carbons can help us to relate back to these development goals that are connected to the ocean and connected to our understanding of humans and society as an integral part of the ocean carbon cycle, not just an external forcing that that we can ignore or can address as an external component. And so we're also tying all of this into another kind of driver for this, why this is all happening right now, is the UN Decade of the Oceans, Ocean Science for Sustainable Development. This was a proclamation that was passed by the General Assembly of the United Nations back in 2017 and is set to take effect next year, in the next few months, as we start what we call the Oceans Decade, in trying to understand how do we move forward with these sustainable developments, and what is the ocean's role in all of that. The Ocean Decade has identified a number of societal outcomes and science challenges, and I would argue that the IOC-R program, the strategy that we've developed, can address most, if not all, of these outcomes and challenges. But in particular, I'd like to just really highlight three of them. One is the understanding of the effects of multiple stressors on ocean ecosystems, enhancing our understanding of ocean climate nexus, and ensuring sustainable ocean observation systems, in particular, as they relate to actionable data and information. These are three particular challenges where I think the IOC-R strategy can significantly advance these challenges forward and develop outcomes that are significant for the Sustainable Development Goals. So this is a figure that just kind of rounds up all of these. I recognize that this is kind of an alphabet soup, so I apologize for that. But it just kind of summarizes the idea that the IOC-R is intended to integrate all these different aspects of ocean carbon cycle research. And it's got ties on the right-hand side here with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, with the UN Decade of the Oceans that's coming up, and kind of this global scale connection to society and sustainable developments. And on the left side here, we think that the IOC-R is also well positioned to feed information into this next assessment report that's coming up from the IPCC, and the UNFCCC reaction to that IPCC report to inform the politics and the policies that will move forward and be developed over the next decade to try and address some of these societal issues. So again, the strategy document is just a high-level overview of what we see as the major questions and issues that need to be addressed. We hope to be publishing that vision document in the next month or so, and look forward to your feedback on that. We recognize that this is an ongoing process that will involve implementation plans and strategies that need to be developed within the different nations, within the research programs and the international efforts. We've suggested a number of different approaches for addressing these questions that are listed here on this figure, but we do look forward to input from any of you that are interested in this and contributing to this effort as we move forward in developing the implementation plans and how we might use these different approaches to best move forward with our understanding of ocean carbon research over the next decade. So thank you very much, and I look forward to addressing any questions that might come up in that section of the meeting.